There are moments in war that defy logic, moments so violent and instantaneous that they seem ripped from a Michael Bay movie and stitched together with nightmares. This story begins with one of those moments, a rooftop in Afghanistan, 2 Marines standing guard, and a hand grenade lobbed from the void. Most would dive away, one didn't. He dove on top of it. His name is William Kyle Carpenter, and he didn't just survive the blast, he turned it into a damn legacy. Before the explosion, Carpenter was a relatively unknown Lance Corporal in the United States Marine Corps. Afterward, he became something else entirely, a stitched up, rebuilt, titanium-packed legend. When that grenade landed, time didn't slow down. It practically hit the brakes, parked, and dared someone to do something stupidly heroic. Carpenter didn't hesitate. He threw himself on the grenade like it was a live wire at a rock concert. The blast tore through him, face shattered, lungs collapsed, arm broken like a cheap toy, and yet somehow he lived. Not just lived, he refused to die. His fellow Marine, Nick Eufrazio, was seriously injured, but survived in part because Kyle made his body a shield. The silence after the blast was deafening. Blood pooled, dust hung in the air like a curtain, and in that chaos, the legend of Kyle Carpenter was born. This chapter isn't just about the explosion. It's about the opening salvo in a story that would push the boundaries of human endurance, redefine what it means to serve, and ultimately land one Marine the highest honor a grateful nation can bestow. Welcome to the story of a man who caught a grenade with his face and lived to smile about it. Before the battle scars and the Medal of Honor, Kyle Carpenter was just a kid from the American South. Born in Jackson, Mississippi, and raised in the quieter corners of South Carolina, where the pine trees outnumber the people and high school football is taken more seriously than federal law. He wasn't born a Marine. He was born a wiry, energetic ball of curiosity and chaos, more likely to jump off the roof with a trash bag parachute than sit quietly and color inside the lines. Early photos show a mischievous smile, the kind that says, "I may or may not have just set something on fire." That's the kind of raw material you need to mold a warfighter. Carpenter was the kind of kid who didn't need much to be entertained. Give him a bike, a BB gun, and a dirt road, and he'd be gone all day. He wasn't looking for trouble. Trouble just kept finding him, like a heat-seeking missile aimed at youthful energy. As he grew older, that energy got more focused. After high school, he enrolled at the University of South Carolina, but the classroom walls started feeling more like a cage than a calling. While other kids were mapping out careers with PowerPoint presentations, Cal felt a different pull. The kind of pull that grabs you by the soul and points you towards something greater. In 2009, at just 19 years old, Carpenter enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. He didn't want to just wear the uniform. He wanted to earn it, bleed for it, become a part of something older and harder than himself. The Marine Corps doesn't do participation trophies. It tears you down to your last molecule and rebuilds you into a war machine fueled by grit, loyalty, and an unhealthy amount of instant coffee. Boot camp at Parris Island is where boys go to either break or become something unrecognizable. Kyle, he didn't just survive it, he thrived. Graduated as one of the top recruits in his platoon, sharp, strong, stubborn, like a pit bull in combat boots. By the time he was assigned to Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines, better known as Hell in a Helmet, he was more than just ready. He was chomping at the bit. He didn't join the Marines to push papers or hand out water bottles. He joined to stand post, take fire, and bring hell to the enemy. Carpenter wasn't molded into a Marine by accident. He was made for it. Heart first, fist second. And he had no idea that Afghanistan was about to write his name in blood, grit, and the pages of history. Helmand Province, Afghanistan. The kind of place where the sun cooks your bones, the dust never settles, and death has a frequent flyer card. This is where Kyle Carpenter and the Marines of the 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines, touched down in 2010. A place so hostile, even the Taliban needed backup. The Marines called it Helmand for a reason. It wasn't just the heat or the terrain, the ever-present stench of human misery. It was the constant threat. Every corner could be rigged with an IED, every kid might be a spotter, and every farmer with a shovel could be burying your tombstone. Carpenter's unit, Fox Company, was stationed in Marjah. once hailed as a Taliban stronghold, now contested inch by bloody inch. Their mission was counterinsurgency, but that's just military jargon for live with the locals and don't get blown to hell. It was part combat, part diplomacy, and mostly nightmare. Carpenter was assigned to a remote outpost, manning a compound that looked more like a sandbag junkyard than a fortress. The walls were crumbling, the wiring was held together with wishful thinking, and the roof was a sniper's dream. Yet every night, the Marines held that position like it was the Alamo. They took turns pulling security on the rooftop, scanning the darkness through night vision goggles, and praying the next shadow wasn't carrying an RPG. Sleep came in bursts, 20 minutes here, an hour there, if you were lucky. Meals were cold, water was hot, and the air tasted like diesel fumes and burnt cordite. Kyle wasn't the biggest guy in the unit, he wasn't the loudest, but he was always there when he needed to be, on post, on time, and in the fight. If something needed fixing, he fixed it. If a buddy needed covering, he covered. He was a workhorse with the heart of a lion and the humor of a drunk pirate. There were gunfights, ambushes, and too many close calls to count. On one patrol, the unit walked directly into an IED belt. Shrapnel flew, screams followed. They survived, but just barely. Carpenter didn't blink. He carried gear, bodies, whatever needed moving. He didn't run from the fire. He ran toward it. Every day was a coin toss. Would the compound get hit tonight? Would the next step be your last? That's the life Kyle Carpenter lived for weeks. An adrenaline loop of dust, gunpowder, and gallows humor. And then came November 21st, the day that would test everything he was, everything he'd trained to be, and everything he was willing to sacrifice. November 21st, 2010. The kind of day you never forget, not because of something you did, but because of something you were willing to do for someone else. It was early in the morning in Marjah, Afghanistan. The sun had barely begun to sear the horizon when Lance Corporal Kyle Carpenter and Lance Corporal Nick Afrazio took position on the roof of Patrol Base Dakota. It was a ratty little outpost, crumbling mud walls, makeshift guardrails, and barely enough elevation to get a good look at the surrounding village. But it was their outpost, and that roof was the front line. The two Marines had pulled security duty more times than they could count. It was routine: watch the tree line, check the alleyways, call out anything sketchy. But Marjah had a twisted sense of humor. One minute you're scanning the horizon, and the next you're praying your last thoughts won't be, I should have ducked. The rooftop was barely large enough for two people to lay prone. Sandbags were stacked like Lego bricks, with gaps wide enough to sneak a rifle barrel through. Below, the rest of the squad moved in a rhythm of patrol prep and routine maintenance. For Kyle, it was just another day in the suck. At about 10 a.m., something shifted. They saw movement in the distance, nothing too crazy at first, but then, in a blur of muscle memory and chaos, a grenade came sailing through the air like it had been lobbed by the Grim Reaper himself. It landed right between the two Marines. Now let's talk physics and timing. A grenade fuse burns for about 4 seconds. That's not a lot of time. It's barely enough to swear, but Carpenter didn't need a countdown. He didn't need a huddle or a team vote. He saw the threat, processed it, and acted immediately. He didn't hesitate. He didn't flinch. He didn't call out. He threw himself on the grenade like it was a damn touchdown, and he was the only one on the field who knew the play. The explosion hit like a freight train made of nails. The blast radius shredded everything in reach. Kyle's body absorbed nearly the full force. Face, chest, arms, ripped open like a rag doll in a hurricane. The concussion shattered his jaw and right arm, collapsed a lung, and drove shrapnel deep into his skull. His carotid artery was nearly severed, one eye destroyed, teeth gone, skin shredded, blood sprayed across the rooftop like someone popped a paint balloon. Afrazio was injured, shrapnel to the head, traumatic brain injury, but he lived because Kyle had made himself a human wall. The Marines below heard the blast. Chaos erupted, yelling, scrambling, swearing. Doc sprinted up the stairs to find Carpenter bleeding out and barely conscious. One corpsman later said his body looked like it had been chewed up and spit out by war itself. There was so much blood they couldn't find the entry wounds, just a crimson tide pouring from a man who looked more like a corpse than a Marine. They started immediate trauma care, packed gauze, tourniquets, adrenaline shots, anything to keep his heart pumping. The medevac bird was summoned faster than you can say miracle. Within minutes, Kyle was being lifted into a helicopter, his body limp, shredded, barely recognizable. Everyone thought he was dead. Hell, one report even listed him as a KIA. But somewhere beneath his shredded uniform and mangled flesh, Kyle Carpenter wasn't done. His heart kept beating, his lungs kept sucking air down like a man who still had business on this earth. Doctors couldn't believe it. Nurses called it divine. Marines called it badass. He shouldn't have survived, but he did. And in that single second, that selfless, impossible, damn near mythic decision turned Kyle Carpenter from a good Marine into a national legend. The rest of his story, well, that'd be told in titanium plates, bone grafts, and a grin that refused to fade, even after half of his face was rearranged by a Taliban grenade. When Kyle woke up, it wasn't in a hospital bed. It was in a war zone of silence, pain, and confusion. He was 21 years old, missing chunks of his face, blind in one eye, unable to speak, and more machine than man, but somehow alive. His medical journey didn't begin in Bethesda. It started in that bird, the medevac helicopter, with corpsmen screaming, blood-soaked gloves, and an EKG monitor that sounded like it was on life support. They landed at Camp Bastion, the British Field Hospital in Helmand, where surgeons performed emergency stabilization procedures. From there, it was medical hopscotch, Germany, then Bethesda Naval Hospital. And that's where the real war began. More than 40 surgeries, not 40 stitches, 40 surgeries. They rebuilt his jaw using titanium plates, his skull using bone grafts, and his eye socket with enough hardware to confuse a TSA scanner. His right arm was shattered beyond recognition. He couldn't walk without help, couldn't eat, couldn't talk. He communicated with a whiteboard and a marker. His body was a disaster zone, but his mind, still sharp as a scalpel. And he was funny, like annoyingly funny. Nurses would come in expecting tears and trauma, and instead get jokes scribbled on a whiteboard about how he was looking for modeling gigs, or asking if this much metal qualified him for free Wi-Fi. But behind the wit was a beast of burden. Physical therapy wasn't optional, it was a gauntlet. Every step, every rep was a battle. Imagine dragging a sandbag uphill with broken bones and a face full of screws. Now do it while smiling. That was Kyle. He relearned how to walk, how to eat, how to exist. Every hour was accounted for. Recovery wasn't a chapter, it was a damn trilogy. They shaved bone, reshaped his face, tried to make breathing less of a gamble. Each night he went to sleep looking like a demolition site and woke up ready to fight for another inch of normalcy. His mother slept by his bedside more nights than not. His Marine brothers visited, shell-shocked but proud. The nation began to take notice. But Kyle wasn't interested in sympathy. He wasn't a sob story. He was a walking, stitched-up middle finger to the enemy that tried to kill him. Doctors said he'd never run again, so he ran a marathon. They said his arm would never fully recover, so he learned how to do push-ups one-handed. He didn't just want to heal, he wanted to become more. The hospital staff called him a medical marvel. He called himself lucky. But this wasn't luck. This was war-forged resilience. This was muscle, madness, and a Marine's refusal to lay down and die. Kyle Carpenter wasn't just being put back together. He was being remade, stronger, scarred, and damn near bulletproof. Kyle Carpenter was already a legend in the Marine Corps, but in 2014, the entire world found out just how legendary he really was. The U.S. military doesn't hand out medals of honor like party favors. It takes something extraordinary, something biblical. And what Kyle did on that rooftop, that checked all of those boxes and added a few new ones. It started with a call, not from a buddy, not from a corpsman, but from the White House. "Hello, Kyle. The president would like to speak with you." The what now? That call, delivered with all the calm of ordering takeout, confirmed it. Kyle Carpenter would receive the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military award, the pinnacle, the literal gold standard of battlefield heroism. And the guy receiving it still had metal in his face and a sarcastic comment for every occasion. The lead up to the ceremony was a media blitz. Interviews, press kits, morning shows. Suddenly this grinning, half-metal Marine was the face of valor. He made the rounds with a smile that said, "Yeah, I caught a grenade. No, I don't recommend it." America couldn't get enough of him. June 19th, 2014, the East Room of the White House. President Barack Obama took the podium, flanked by Marines in dress blues and a crowd that included top brass, dignitaries, and Kyle's family. It was an event dripping in tradition, the kind of moment where history hangs in the air like cigar smoke. The president spoke clearly. Kyle Carpenter should not be alive today. But the truth is, Kyle is a shining example of what happens when love for your brothers and your country outweighs fear.
Because with that singular act of courage, Kyle, you not only saved your brother in arms, you displayed a heroism in the blink of an eye that will inspire for generations. Valor worthy of our nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor. Anybody who has had a chance to get to know this young man knows you're not going to get a better example of what you want in an American or a Marine. Despite all the attention, he's still the same humble guy from Gilbert, South Carolina, population of about 600. You'll notice that Kyle doesn't hide his scars. He's proud of them and the service that they represent. But in that instant, he fulfilled those words of Scripture, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." I want you to consider what Kyle has endured just to stand here today. More than 2.5 years in the hospital, grueling rehabilitation, brain surgery to remove shrapnel from his head, nearly 40 surgeries to repair a collapsed lung, fractured fingers, a shattered right arm broken in more than 30 places, multiple skin grafts. He has a new prosthetic eye, a new jaw, new teeth, and one hell of a smile.
Then came the medal itself, a light blue ribbon holding a Star of Valor, draped around a neck that had nearly been torn apart just 4 years earlier. Kyle stood at attention, eyes forward, jaw slightly clenched, not because of the nerves, but because he still couldn't fully open it. And yet his posture said everything. It said, "I'd do it again." What followed was surreal. He became a national icon overnight. The Medal of Honor isn't just hardware, it's a spotlight, and it burns bright. Kyle was featured on major networks, honored at sporting events, and mobbed at veteran conventions like a rock star in camouflage. But here's the thing, he never acted like a hero. He shrugged it off with a kind of humility that only makes the legend grow. He talked about his brothers, about earning it every day, about what really matters. This wasn't a victory lap. It was a tribute run for the ones who didn't come back, for the ones still fighting battles that never made headlines. In a nation hungry for heroes, Kyle Carpenter showed up with a shredded face, a titanium jaw, and the kind of spirit you can't fake. And when the camera zoomed in on that Medal of Honor, the world saw something even more powerful. A Marine who gave everything and still had more to give. For some, the end of active duty is a closing chapter. For Kyle Carpenter, it was just the start of Volume 2. After receiving the Medal of Honor, Kyle could have just coasted. He had the street cred, the admiration, the ceremonial handshakes. Most people would have vanished into a quiet retirement with a pension and a few speaking gigs. But Kyle, He chose to sprint headfirst into civilian life like it owed him money. First stop, college. Not some honorary degree or military fluff program. We're talking about the real deal. Textbooks, finals, all-nighters. He enrolled at the University of South Carolina, yes, the other USC, and set to work earning a degree in international studies. Imagine walking into a class next to a guy with a Medal of Honor around his neck and a jawline rebuilt with titanium. Talk about raising the bar. But he didn't want to be just the Medal of Honor guy. He wanted to be someone who could influence the world with ideas, with experience, with perspective. And if that meant grinding through academia with kids a decade younger than him, so be it. Outside of the classroom, Kyle became a megaphone for veterans. Not the teary-eyed, flag-waving poster boy, but a brutally honest, often hilarious advocate for resilience. He hit the talk show circuit, delivered keynote speeches, and even authored a book titled You Aren't Worth It, which is part memoir and part motivational uppercut. It reads like a war story written on a bar napkin with heart. And let's talk about fitness. While most people use surgery as an excuse to skip leg day, Kyle ran the Marine Corps Marathon. Let me repeat that. After absorbing a grenade with his face, he ran 26.2 miles. No shortcuts, no inspiration points, just raw grit in motion. He skydived with the Army's Golden Knights. He did push-up challenges that would humble CrossFit junkies. His Instagram turned into a one-man crusade for living life harder than it tries to hit you. But behind the badassery was something deeper. Kyle's message was always simple. Don't wait for near-death experiences to start living. He wasn't preaching, he was living proof. He connected with wounded warriors, teens struggling with identity, and civilians who never touched a rifle but knew pain all the same. He spoke not as a superhero, but as a guy who's been shattered and rebuilt, physically, mentally, and spiritually. In every post, every podcast, every campus he visited, Carpenter made one thing clear. The explosion didn't define him. What came after did. From the battlefield to the lecture hall, from ICU to international stages, Kyle Carpenter proved that valor doesn't retire. It just evolves. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving with humor, hustle, and a heart that could take another hit and keep swinging. Legacy isn't built in a day. It's forged in seconds, sometimes in a single defining moment. For Kyle Carpenter, that moment was 4 seconds long and changed everything. But his legacy, that's still unfolding, like a battle flag in slow motion. Every Marine who's heard the story knows the rooftop, knows the grenade, knows the decision. It's a tale whispered in boot camps and barked out in motivational speeches. You think you're tough? This guy threw himself on a grenade and lived. But it's not just about the act, it's about the why. Kyle didn't jump on that grenade to earn a medal. He didn't do it for headlines. He did it because Nick Euphrazio was standing next to him. Because in that moment, there was no time for strategy, only instinct. And his instinct was sacrifice. Sacrifice for a brother. That kind of selflessness echoes. It echoes in every Marine who watches their buddy's back just a little closer. It echoes in every veteran who wonders if their service meant something and sees in Kyle proof that it absolutely did. It echoes in every civilian who hears his story and realizes that courage isn't a movie stunt. It's a split-second choice to protect someone else, no matter the cost. The Medal of Honor may hang around Kyle's neck, but the weight of his legacy is carried by everyone who hears his story and walks away changed. In high schools, they show his picture when teaching character. In VA hospitals, his recovery gives hope to the hopeless. In war zones, his name is spoken with reverence, because even among warriors, he's something rare. Ask Kyle, and he'll tell you he's not special, that he was just doing his job. But that's the point. He was just doing his job, and he did it like a damn superhero. And then there's the flip side of his legacy, humility. Kyle doesn't brag, he doesn't strut, his social media isn't filtered glory shots. It's gratitude, resilience, and the occasional dad joke. He's not an icon because he tries to be. He's an icon because he already is, and he hasn't let it go to his head. He speaks to Gold Star families with tears in his eyes. He talks to young service members about finding purpose after the uniform comes off. He reminds America that bravery isn't about being fearless, it's about being terrified and charging forward anyway. Kyle Carpenter's legacy is a living one. It's in motion, constantly evolving. Not a statue in a park, but a heartbeat that echoes through classrooms, barracks, podcasts, hospital rooms, and combat zones. He took the blast so others wouldn't have to. And in doing so, he gave the rest of us a new definition of what it means to live. Strip away the headlines, the speeches, the Medal of Honor. What you're left with is a man who walked through hell, rebuilt himself from rubble, and somehow came out on the other side smiling like he just got away with something. Kyle Carpenter isn't just a war hero. He's a walking contradiction in the best way. He's part Spartan warrior, part stand-up comet, part philosopher in a flannel shirt. He's the kind of guy who'll drop a self-deprecating joke seconds after sharing a story that makes your spine tighten. He'll tell you about catching a grenade like it was a bad day at the office. It was Monday. I took a little shrapnel. The coffee was terrible. But behind every joke is a truth deeper than most people ever dare to swim in. The truth is, Kyle has good days and bad days. The pain doesn't magically go away just because you're famous. The surgeries may be over, but the recovery is forever. But you'll never catch him complaining. He wears his scars like armor, not wounds. He talks about earning it every day. Not the medal, but life itself. As if survival came with a bill and he's paying it forward, one push-up, one speech, one act of kindness at a time.
November 21st, we were on top of the roof, just him and myself, and I guess an attack started. A lot of it's fuzzy, a lot of it is frustrating because I can't connect all the pieces like I would like to. I do know that I was severely injured with an enemy hand grenade, and the rest is history.
He's met presidents and generals, but he treats janitors and waiters the same way, with eye contact, humility, and a thank you that actually means something. Because that's the man behind the medal, grounded, grateful, gritty. When he tells young Marines his story, it's not to impress, it's to prepare. He reminds them that being a hero isn't about what you do when the grenade lands, it's about what you do after. The hard part isn't the explosion, it's choosing to live with purpose once the smoke clears. He's the guy who took the worst day of his life and turned it into a beacon. Not because he had to, because he chose to. And that, in the end, is what separates Kyle Carpenter from the mythology we wrap around our heroes. He doesn't stand on a pedestal. He walks beside us, laughing, limping, leading. So when the video ends and the comments roll in and someone types, "What a badass," know this, they're right, but not just because he stopped a grenade, because he got back up, because he keeps getting back up, and because through it all, he reminds the rest of us what it means to live, not just with courage, but with heart. I'm Dave Newton. Please follow, like, subscribe, comment, share, do all those things. Let me know what other war hero you'd like to hear about. And I thank you for watching. Until next time, stand tall.